Hey guys, I'm Ava, and let's talk about Pokemon. Today's topic is an interesting one. We're going to be talking about singles, because I talk a lot on my channel about sealed product, in particular modern sealed product. But we're not going to be talking about that today. I know you hate modern sealed, it's okay. But we're going to be talking about singles. This doesn't really depend on the era. This will generally hold true. So I know I'm going to offend some people today, so let's put on our glasses. And we're going to talk about singles and investing in singles in particular, and whether or not it is a viable strategy or an optimal strategy, and in what circumstances is it going to be better than others. All right, so when we're talking about singles, I think it falls into four main categories. The first of these is, of course, just going to be fun. So there are people who just buy cards that they like. Oh my god, the horror, I know. It's unimaginable to buy something just because you like it. I know. So these people aren't really investing. And this, I think, is totally fine, because when you're having fun, you're not doing it with the intent to make money, so you're not going to be disappointed if you don't. So this is a great area to be in. So this, I like this area. I don't know if it's where I always am. The second one is kind of an in-between. So these are people who are mindful of fun, but they also care about the value of their cards. So that means these people probably aren't going to be paying, TCG player prices. They're probably going to be hunting around for deals, that type of thing, or they're going to wait to buy a certain card they like until they think they can get it for a better price. That goes for people who are just doing it for fun as well. Like, for example, modern sets always wait a few months after release to buy your singles. I think we all know that by now. But these people are also hoping for it to appreciate in the long run. So these people are probably going to buy more desirable cards. This is usually where I like to sit. I prefer to buy just a few cards that I really love, rather than buying a lot of cards that I don't really love. And part of why this is because I think this is just an intuitive thing to do. If I like something and I think it's cool, the chances are someone else probably does. If I'm buying things hoping other people think they're cool, but I don't know how great of a strategy that is. That's part of why I don't buy, a lot of Charizards or those type cards, because I'm just not super into them. So I buy things that I like, and those aren't going to be the things that are going to appreciate the most necessarily. Obviously, Entei isn't the most popular Pokemon, but when you're going to complete a master set or something like that, you're going to end up picking up a few high-end cards, for example, first edition WotC Hollows, those types of things. Those are going to be desirable cards, and you're buying them because you like them. And in the long run, they'll probably work out pretty well for you. So the third category, we're gonna put in blue, partly because my black marker is dying, but just for some differentiation as well. So 3 is gonna be people who are buying cards to flip them, mostly in the short run, and also people who are looking to grade the cards to flip them, because I think we all know that this has become a major category when it comes to singles. Maybe a few years ago, this would have been a very small group of people doing this. It was more niche, and also that would help to make it easier, but now because so many people are doing it, it's become a lot harder. Now the fourth category is gotta be people who are trying to buy out cards. Now, a buyout doesn't mean they're actually going to be buying every single copy of a card, but it's also people who are holding a large stake in one or a few particular cards. But we're just going to call this buyouts, because I think when I say that, everyone gets an idea of what I'm talking about. You're buying a lot of cards. So this one is by far the riskiest, and we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to give you a few examples. And I know, because I'm talking about so many different things, that at least something I will say in this video will probably offend everyone who watches it, so it's okay, I understand. Feel free to leave the dislike. So first up, fun. I don't think we need to talk about this too much. It's great, it's fun. If you're being financially responsible, and by that I just mean you're not spending more than you can afford, I think this is totally fine. And it has some natural overlap with 2, because if you're buying cards you like, again, I think that same thing applies. So this is the next category, which is people who are looking for fun and mindful of the value. This is where I usually like to hang out, so I am a bit biased towards it, obviously, but for investing purposes, usually go for sealed products. I've talked about in a lot of videos why I prefer sealed products to singles, and part of that is because the supply of sealed products is ever decreasing up to the limit. Obviously the limit is 0, they can't go that much lower. So products that are fairly old aren't going to be, becoming that much rarer. But the opposite goes for singles, in that the supply is going to be increasing. That's a really, really bad line, but you get the point. They are going to be increasing continuously. Obviously, they can decrease over time. because of people damaging them, kids and whatnot. However, modern cards, I think that's much less of a prevalent occurrence than with vintage cards. And this concern also applies less to vintage cards in general because almost all vintage products have already been opened. So for this reason, I think that sealed product has an inherent advantage, and because people are paying a surplus for that potential. So there is the potential to get something, and the further out you go, the less what's actually in the box matters. You know, people don't like hearing that, but it's just true. So that's why I usually just stick to, you know, being mindful with my purchases of singles and sticking to sealed product when I am hoping to make a longer term return. And we're talking at least, you know, 5 to 10 years, probably longer, because hopefully I'm going to be alive longer than 10 years, but who knows. So number 3 is going to be flipping and grading. This one actually kind of gets my goat, so I'm going to rant about it. If you couldn't tell, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants in this video, but we're going to get to some actual numbers. So these are the people who, you know, you're on a trading subreddit or some kind of forum or just in real life, and they're going to be the people who are saying that they are only looking for cards that are, you know, gem mint quality. Sometimes they'll even use the words like that are only 10 quality. And it's incredibly annoying to deal with these people because they will want so many pictures. They also usually are going to try to lowball you. And it's just, in general, not very fun dealing with these people. They're also the people who, in the card store, are going to spend 10 minutes looking at every single card, pulling out every $5 card, and looking at them over. And then they're going to try and send them all off to PSA, or more likely CGC, and then be salty when they don't get exclusively perfect 10s if it's CGC, or just 10s if it's PSA. And they're also the people who will probably regret paying $50 to $100 to grade their baby shiny score bunny or whatever. But these people can actually succeed. So I'm being a bit critical here, and I'm talking about a trope. So the people who actually succeed at this can make a lot of money. You know, it used to be so much more profitable because it just was niche. And now it's not, everybody is trying to do it. Hopefully grading prices will come back down. Maybe this will be more feasible again, but I think people have just kind of woken up to this reality, and the populations for so many of these cards have gone up that this has just become a lot harder. And I think if you aren't experienced in it, this is not going to be the way to go. I think it feels probably like the easiest way to make money in this, but especially with the current grading prices, you've got to be really, really smart about what you're doing. And I think the cards that you can really make money on, a lot of times they're going to be higher end cards, and you're also taking more of a risk there because, you know, for one card you're investing maybe $300 in the card itself. So that's a lot riding on that one result, whereas if you're submitting $10, $30 cards, you've got some wiggle room in there, right? You might get a few 10s, you might get a few 9s, etc. But when you're buying these higher end cards, there's more risk. So if you can't afford to buy a lot, obviously that risk becomes higher. So I think this one is something to be mindful of. But I think that this one can work. And this one, I think, is less of an investing strategy. It's more of a business strategy. Obviously, you can buy cards with the hope to grade them one day. I have a lot of cards that maybe I'd get graded one day, but I just haven't. But the fourth category is where things start to get a little shaky. So when I say buyouts, I'm talking about people who are going to be buying a lot of one card. It's really hard to do an actual buyout in Pokemon because the supply for any given card is so great, but I do believe they're actually pretty common in Magic the Gathering, at least that's my understanding. So this is going to be, you're buying 50 to 100 copies of a card, maybe more, but it really, to me, is anything where you're buying more than like 2 or 3 copies, because at that point you're no longer buying them to collect, and you're also exposing yourself to that single card much more. And this is really problematic for a lot of reasons, and this is why I don't advocate for investing in singles, in part because a lot of times people will think they found a really great card that's undervalued and just buy so many copies of it. And sometimes you'll get lucky, right? It's always the thing. Someone gets lucky one of their first times, and then they keep going crazy. So for example, let's say you buy a card for $5, right? Let's say you buy 10 copies of it. So that's $50 that you've invested, not that much. Let's say it doubles and goes to $10. That would be really, really great. So it's $100, but after, you know, your selling fees and shipping fees, if you're selling online, you know, maybe you're looking more like $80, probably a little less, depends how you're packaging them. $10 cards you can probably ship in a plain white envelope, so let's say $80. So you've made $30 in profit, which is actually really good because that's a 60% ROI, right? However, the danger comes when you start to scale up and you start to get confident. I'm not even talking cocky, I'm talking confident because it's very, very risky. You know, when you're buying a set, you're buying a basket of cards and you have all those advantages that I have already talked about. But when you're buying a single card, you're investing in that one card. There are so many cards that are over a decade old that have hardly seen any appreciation. You know, prime cards aren't worth that much. They've appreciated a little bit. Level X cards, so you could be sitting on these for a long time. The people doing this a lot of times are hoping for a quick turnaround. So maybe in like 6 months, they think it'll be more. Or just, you know, even in a few weeks or something. So, you know, you've made your $30, so now you have netted $80. Now let's say that you are pretty confident. Let's say you're gonna buy a $20 card now. You know, not super expensive, but let's say that we're gonna buy 10 copies of this $20 card, right? We're keeping the quantity of cards the same here, but now we have invested $200 into this. But this one doesn't work out. This $20 card becomes a $10 card. You bought it right on release hoping that it would continue to go up because it can happen. Sometimes cards do go up after release, but now it's worth $10. Okay, so we have 10 times 10 is 100. So we're left with a $100 loss. And we did make $30 on our first transaction, so we are only down $70. But that's a lot. You know, we're down more than our initial $50 we invested. So you can see kind of the risk here. People always want to scale up. You know, this is the kind of classic thing you see on Wall Street Bets. It goes for Pokemon as well. And the problem is also that when you're buying these with the intention of turning them around quickly, you're getting antsy. You know, people who are doing this probably are getting antsy because they need this liquidity, right? They, you know, invested a lot of money in this card. You could scale these up to 2,000 to 1,000. It really does apply to pretty much any dollar value of card, but now you don't have that liquidity. So you want to sell this because you need that liquidity because there's an opportunity cost with having that invested there, right? We've talked about this in some other videos, but you are losing money by losing the opportunity to invest that in something else, whether it's more Pokemon cards, the stock market, or anything else. You're losing money by letting it sit there. So you're sitting, you know, with your $70 loss, but wait, that's not actually your entire loss, right? So your $200 of cards are now worth $100. But you know what? Those fees still exist, right? We said it would be $20 there, so we have $20 more of fees here. So you're really only worth $80. Now, that adds another $20 to our loss. So we are down $90. Now, the plus signs and minus signs here don't make sense, but hopefully the numbers do, okay? I just was kind of freeballing this. But $90 is how much we're down. So of this 200, 80 of it came with our profit from our first card, and then another 120 came from us. We doubled down with it, okay? But now we're down 90 bucks. That really sucks. So this 200 is now worth $80, and that's not that much. You know, are you gonna go back in and buy more singles with this? I don't know. But for $200, you could have bought 2 Fusion Strike booster boxes. The thing here that I'm trying to get at is downside. So I've talked about this, nobody likes hearing about it, but the most important thing in investing is to minimize downside risk. This does not minimize downside risk. There is kind of a floor for sealed products. Obviously, this depends on what the sealed product is and what is in it. But even a great set like Evolving Skies, even if it gets reprinted, it's probably never gonna go below that wholesale price. I don't think it will ever go below $80. Something like Fusion Strike, you know, people don't think it's as good of a set, but it has still held above that $80 mark or at that $80 mark. And even things like Battle Styles. It's widely regarded as one of the worst sets to come out recently. And relatively speaking, that may be true, but fundamentally it is still a good set. And it still has held above $75. And, you know, it was kind of printed a lot, but there's a floor there, right? So you know that you aren't going to zero. This you could go to zero. Obviously that's not likely, but there is nothing to protect you from a 50% drop. Singles prices swing wildly. And I don't like this, but I have occasionally bought a card more than one copy because I really like the card and I believe in it. However, I can tell you from personal experience that it doesn't always work out. One card that I bought because I thought it was really cool was the Secret Rare Pikachu from Cosmic Eclipse, insert photo here. And I bought 5 copies of this card, which for me is a lot for one card. I just don't normally do it. I think it was 5 copies, maybe it was like 6, but I think it was 5. So I paid $45 per near mint copy of this card, right? So 45 times 5, how much is that? $225. So I invested $225 in this, right? You know, that's not that bad. But this card dropped to about $30 per near mint copy, and I knew I was paying a lot, but I was cut down by a third just from that. So this would have just turned into $150. Oof. And that's before fees, mind you. So, you know, we can say $80 for 100, so that would leave me with $120, basing off of 20% net fees. So I would have been left with $120, so I would have been down almost 50% if I were trying to sell this online. Obviously, it's different if you sell in person, we all know that, but most people are selling cards online, all right? It's just true. So I would have almost been cut in half. And I didn't sell the card, obviously. I really like the card, so I'm not in any rush to sell it. So now it's back up to $35 a card. So I've made back a third of that loss. So I would have been then at $175, and then the fees would have been $35. So I would have been left with $140. So I was not losing as much, but it's still a loss. You know, when you're buying these, you need to account for fees and stuff when you're thinking about selling them. And also your time. So $35 to $45 for a card, that's potentially expensive enough where it's worth your time. But if you're buying $1 cards, those are penny stocks. And those $1 cards, they could jump to $2. Congrats. But you're probably not going to make very much money on them at all. You've got the fees, and those have a minimum, I believe, of at least somewhere around 30 to 35 cents on most platforms. So that already cuts your profit by a third. You've got to pay for your stamp. So you're probably coming out with 25 cents on each of those $1 cards, even though on the surface you have 100% ROI. You really don't. You've got 25%, but the time that you're investing in these is so much, and also the stress, as we said. You know, it can be very, very stressful. So buyouts and just buying a lot of one card, I don't support. You're saying, well, what if I buy all the cards? You know, all the ones on TCG Player. Just because you buy all the ones on TCG Player doesn't mean it's not going to repopulate. Pretty much, think about it like this. If you can afford to buy a lot of copies of a card, it's not that rare. Or nobody wants it. And neither of those are good. If nobody wants it, you shouldn't be buying all the copies of it. But more likely, there are just a lot of copies of it available, and you are not going to be able to buy all of them. Or maybe there aren't that many copies available. Well, then it's going to be too expensive for you to buy all of them, okay? Unless you are a very high-end collector. I'm guessing pretty much everyone who watches these videos cannot afford to be buying, I don't know, like 100 copies of Gold Star Rayquaza or something. I just don't see it happening, you know? But when we're up here, we've got some wiggle room. And here too. This maybe is like the saving grace for people trying to do buyouts, you know? I could potentially grade these cards. Now this Pikachu from Cosmic Eclipse is going for $35 near mint from TCG Player. But how much is a PSA 10 copy going for? Ava, who is editing, you can tell us, but I'm gonna guess $100 to $150 probably. So that could save me. Obviously though, at the current grading prices, it can't. So I am still stuck with these 5 cards, right? If I were desperate to sell them, I would have to sell them for that loss unless I want to pay $100 to grade them, and that almost certainly is not worth it, especially because there's no guarantee of getting 10s. So you're still having that opportunity cost there. I have to have these cards if I don't want to sell them at a loss. I have to keep holding them until either they rise in value or this price to grade becomes much, much lower. Let's say it goes back down $20. Let's say it goes to $20. You know, maybe we'll get $10 back, but let's say I wait a year, maybe a year and a half even, and grading goes back down to $20. Then my investment in these will be $65 per card. And let's say, let's actually do some math here. So we're gonna erase this. So I've invested $65 per card at this rate, okay? Now, 65 times 5. Do we know what that is? It's $325. So my cost basis has gone up significantly from the initial $225, but I have the potential here for those higher returns. Let's say that I get 2 10s, okay? And then those maybe are gonna be worth $125, we're gonna say, okay? Now, I don't know what the exact prices are for this card, but it doesn't really matter because it's hypothetical. It's pretty reasonable for a card that is $35 raw to then become $125 as a PSA 10 when it's a fairly desirable card, okay? So then I get 3 copies that are PSA 9s, we'll say. Maybe I even get 1 8, actually. Let's say I get 2 9s and 1 8. And now, this is with PSA, because if we're grading with CGC, they're worth less and probably gonna get lower grades. So we're gonna say we're getting 2 9s. Let's say a 9 is worth $55, maybe a little bit more. No, let's say, no, 55. They're going for 35 raw. There's a bit of a premium there. It's kind of also, part of that's just the grading cost being built in, right? So we're gonna say $55 right here. And then we got 1 8. It's gonna be worth $35, is what we're gonna say. We're gonna say it's worth exactly how much a near mint copy raw is going for. Now we can add all these up and we get 250 plus 110 plus 35. Now, can anyone tell me what this means? That is $395, okay? So we're in the green. Finally, we are in the green. Except, again, the fees come into play, right? So the fees aren't going to take up quite as high of a percentage here because we are only really selling 5 cards, to be fair. So first, how much are our selling fees? Very important, obviously. So let's say they are 13%. So we're multiplying this by 0.87, which is the same as 1 minus 13.13. So then we have, let's say, $20 to ship all these. So that averages $4 per card. Now, do you think this number is still going to be above $325? Now, is this above $325? It is not. It is, I believe, $323 and like 67 cents. So let's just round up to like $324 because, you know, we're being generous here. All right, now I'm only down $1. That's pretty great. However, also I did forget to mention the cost to ship to PSA, so we would still be at a loss a little bit. But you can see after all that, I did manage to approximately break even. However, it took a lot of work to get there. You know, these are maybe pessimistic numbers, but that's just kind of how it goes. Grading's gotten tougher, blah, blah, blah. So after waiting a 1.5 years since I bought the card, I am able to break even. However, I have a 1.5 years of opportunity lost there and a lot of stress invested. You know, all those things came into play, but at least I made my money back. So you guys can kind of see from this example the risks that are associated with this. Again, it's not a well-diversified strategy. Maybe, if you're buying a lot of cards, it could work. But I still think sealed is better in the long run because, you know, we talk about investing here. We're talking about a hobby here. I'm not talking about a business, right? This shouldn't have to take up most of your time. Obviously, lots of people like to invest a lot of time in this. I myself do because I think it's really fun. I love doing this kind of stuff and I love talking about it. But I don't love stress and I don't love not knowing something will go back up. When I buy a sealed product, I am very confident in its ability to continue to appreciate. That's just something I know to be true. There are obviously going to be ups and downs, but assuming the Pokemon hobby stays relevant, which is a big if, I know that sealed product will continue to perform. It's not going to be at the rate of old sealed product, but I only need 10% a year. You know, I will be very happy with 10% a year. Obviously, that's accounting for the selling fees. And I'm more interested in the returns 10 years from now than I am getting my 10% in the next couple years. I'm okay with having most of that growth being towards the back half of those 10 years. Okay, I'm okay with it being flat for 5 years. But a single, that's a tough pill to swallow because I don't know if I will get that payoff that I'm expecting after 10 years. If I had been buying a bunch of level X cards or something like that, I wouldn't be doing too well. You know, obviously these things have all appreciated, but sealed will do better. You know, people have been telling me that singles are the heart of the hobby and that I am a killjoy, which is true. I acknowledge that I am a killjoy and also that singles are the heart of the hobby, and I don't disagree. But when we're talking about the investing aspect of it, I think that's very different. Now, obviously, again, you can buy singles in a more responsible way. By that, I just mean financially responsible or just, you know, mindful of potential ROI. But sealed is going to win, okay? Singles are great for collecting and having fun. I love to have fun. Well, yeah, you know. So, but, you know, you kind of get the point here. So, probably no one is watching at this point. So, you and me, I'm just going to tell you, thank you for staying this far into the video. You know, I appreciate that you're willing to watch these. Hopefully you don't hate me, but if you do, I understand. Please comment below which of these categories you fall into, and also, have you had success with buyouts, and what's your success rate? I'd be very interested to hear what people have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know hardly anyone is going to watch this video, but I thought it would be worth making anyway because I like to make these. Now, if you want to support me, I will have my Patreon linked in the description and probably a pinned comment as well as my eBay and Amazon affiliate links if you want to support me in a way that is free to you. If you just buy on those sites after clicking through, I do get a small percentage, which would be very, very appreciated. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, especially my patrons, in particular, Mythic Timmy and Pancake Analysis. Guys, we're only, I think, 8 patrons away from a community portfolio, so I think that'd be really exciting. Maybe we can buy some singles. We'll see. You know, we might buy some singles. We'll see what happens. This has been a really fun video to make, and I will see you guys next time, maybe with something a bit more appealing to the masses.